Most of the suffering in life doesn't come from having too many problems. It comes from the brain being very bad at measuring them properly. A small malfunction gets promoted to everything is broken. A tiny inconvenience is immediately hired as the spokesperson for your entire existence. And once that happens, exhaustion is no longer proportional to reality. Here's the awkward truth. The human brain doesn't evaluate problems using objective scale. It uses attention. Whatever takes up the most mental space feels the most serious, even if, in the grand scheme of your life, it's barely a rounding error. That's why the same situation can be a minor annoyance for one person and a full-day emotional collapse for another. The difference isn't toughness, it's measurement. Cognitive maturity doesn't look like handling stress better. It looks like asking, often silently, okay, but how big is this actually? How much of my life does this occupy? 5%? 2%? Or am I currently letting a typo run the whole operating system? When the brain learns to ask that question, emotional intensity naturally drops, not because the problem disappears, but because it's finally put back in its assigned seat. A very common mental bug is this. The brain confuses a fault with a total system failure. A small issue in a relationship becomes this relationship is doomed. A stressful work period becomes I chose the wrong career. One bad week gets promoted to I've ruined my life. The brain loves all or nothing thinking, perfect or pointless, success or disaster. It's efficient but terrible for long-term energy levels. Deeper cognitive development means learning to separate experiences into independent zones. One part of life can be malfunctioning while other parts continue working just fine. Something can be uncomfortable without invalidating everything else. People who do this aren't more optimistic, they're just less confused. And here's the subtle part. The brain does not learn this skill automatically. If every moment of discomfort is allowed to take over the entire mental screen, the brain logs that behavior as, overreaction. This must be the correct response. But when you deliberately limit the territory a problem is allowed to occupy, the brain recalibrates. At its core, this is mental resource management. Your time, energy, and attention are finite. Dumping all of them into one small malfunction doesn't fix it. It just starves everything else that was working perfectly fine. A well-lived life isn't one without errors. It's one where errors don't get to run the company. And when this skill matures, something interesting happens. Problems don't vanish, they just lose their authority. You still see what isn't working, but you also clearly see what is. That coexistence creates stability, not denial, not forced positivity, just accurate perception. Because in the end, most suffering doesn't come from life having flaws. It comes from giving one small flaw permission to speak for your entire life.